Hey everybody, my name's Clark from Cali Paddler, and I am so excited to introduce a guest today from Kamanu Composites. A new canoe has been unveiled, and it's the Noio. And as somebody who's paddled their Pueo for the last several years and loved it, I have been extremely excited to hear about this new one. I had a chance to go and check out the factory 2 months ago, and that was a real neat treat, but they were tight-lipped, and they wouldn't reveal any details. All I saw was some amazing autoclave, and I hope to learn about what that does. But today's guest is Keizo Gates. Keizo, thank you so much for joining. I got a whole bunch of questions, and I'm just so excited to talk about the new canoe with you. Can you share how you're doing?
Thank you.
Have you gotten any sleep lately?
A little bit of sleep, but between work and I got a 5.5-month-year-old girl, or 5.5-month-year-old girl at home, so that's been a new experience and definitely short on sleep, but it's good. It's amazing, and it's having good things happen at work and good things happen at home. It's called kind of a win-win, and
Right
exciting on both fronts.
What are some of the good things happening at work you can share with us, including the launch here?
Well, so we've had a little bit of the backstory. We've been doing this. It's kind of shocking how quickly time goes by. We've been doing it for a long time now. We started in 2007. We were kind of these young, starry-eyed kids fresh out of college, and here I am, 15 years this year, still doing it. And we're based in Kailua. Like, everything's expensive. Manufacturing in Hawaii is kind of a little bit of a crazy idea. But we found some passion in canoes as far as growing up as kids paddling, and I kind of have an engineering background, so I like building stuff, and it's the materials we get to work with are kind of remarkable. So I've more or less stuck with it, and we kind of, in a way, got sort of stuck in this Quonset hut, doing the same thing, kind of plateaued after a few years, and we weren't really able to expand or kind of like improve things, doing it the way we were. And then COVID happened, and we kind of were able to navigate that in a very successful way, and we found ourselves with a new shop, a bunch of new equipment, and we're really kind of fired up to make use of it all, and kind of grow our business, but also kind of bring better canoes into the world and keep making cool products. So yeah, I mean, I can dive into any of that more, but that's kind of the quick summary of what's been going on the last 2 years.
Right on. You guys were making face shields. You guys doing
yeah.
that even?
I mean, it was a real kind of wild experience. Like everyone, we had lockdown back in March of 2020, and we essentially laid 17 people off, and I'm twiddling my thumbs in the shop, wondering what's going to happen. If you can put yourself back in that month, it was wild. Like really... I'd never experienced, where the government tells you to stay home and don't go to work. Like, is pretty unusual point in all of our lives. And fortunately, this kind of a bunch of events happened that I started kind of making face shields, and there was crazy shortage locally everywhere, and I saw other people doing it, 3D printing things, and I was like, wait a minute, I got all this stuff in the shop. I can make these with things I have in the shop. And I'm sure as some of the people, if they follow our social media, saw the stuff we were posting on there, and it's kind of snowballed from there. We made, between then and August, we made 30,000 on our own, selling direct to everyone. Is local hospitals, local individuals, clinics, lifeguards, firemen, and it all like kind of happened real quickly. And then August 2020, we were like, COVID's over, back to canoes, and we kind of did see a pickup, fortunately, being that it's a single person sport. We kind of were like, okay, yeah, things are back to normal, let's get back to it. We kind of got through that period without collapsing entirely like we expected. And then it it kind of got even bigger after that, which we haven't talked about too much publicly, but we ended up getting a major government contract. And that in 4 months, we made another 820,000 face shields, which you do the math, it's kind of crazy. So, but it was a wild experience. You know, we were able to like learn a lot, even though it's like a, you know, less than $3.75 item. It was a kind of a lesson or teaching experience for us to go back and have a, you know, structure a company that way and do something that quickly. And of course, there was money left over, so we've been able to throw that all back at Canoes. And we're kind of excited to apply some of those same like same goals as far as just increasing production and increasing efficiency and kind of going from a place where you're doing everything yourself to a place where you can scale it up into a much more repeatable process. And that's, you know, you look at others that have done canoe building successfully, it's they work by themselves or with a super small group of people, because that's how you get good results. You do it yourself every time. And like credit to you know, Kai Bartlett, of course, and Tiger and all the people that have done it before us. It's a shockingly you know, I didn't appreciate it till I did it. It's shockingly difficult to build canoes. So figuring out a process that scales better, you know, which is you give credit to Ozone. That's what they've been able to do overseas. So that, you know, that's kind of where we are today. I guess I'm straying and rambling a bit, but
no, this is awesome. So when I went to the shop, I was actually shocked at how many people were at one time working on one canoe. And that was probably one of my biggest takeaways, is how many people at one time were in that room.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it came across as pretty efficient, in the sense that there was a lot of people all working on one unit at one time, and then they would hand off to the next person. It seemed to me like an efficient process. But there seems, I mean,
certain parts of it are, you know, and that's we have a lot to gain as far as efficiency goes. You know, and that's kind of my point being, like, when you are in a smaller shop, you know, and actually I watched Kai's interview, well, not too long ago, and you know, he discussed that, where when you have a small group of 3 to 5 guys, you can do a lot and you can be really efficient about it. But you burn out, you know, you can't sustain that over 15 years at that rate. You know, at one point we were doing 7 boats a week, and just by grinding, working weekends and everything, and it's not a wholly sustainable method. And what you see as you scale up, you know, if you went to the extreme and it's okay, well, we got to make 5 boats a day, you start, like any organization, you start to specialize more. You start to you know, you definitely, in years past, we would have one guy kind of follow a canoe through the entire process. And, you know, that's a great way to do it. That's how you do it in a small group. But it also takes years and years of experience to get to that level. So you kind of inevitably end up specializing where, okay, now you have a, you know, certain number of people finishing canoes, certain number of people specializing in lamination. You know, we are slowly developing a little engineering group that does more of the development. You know, we got a bunch of new toys that require these additional skills that are, you know, we've never had to use before. So I mean, even just the launch of the website yesterday, we were still like tweaking the logo, and it was a, you know, 4-person handoff of, you know, someone working on the iPad and then onto the computer, and then we were setting up the render. My engineer Ian was doing the render, and then I was updating the website. So it was like, and you know, canoe building is the same way. You start to specialize, and there's a path through the shop where it, you know, progresses and eventually gets finished.
Sounds like paddling a 6-man canoe.
Yeah, everyone's got their role, and you know, and that's it's funny. Like, I feel like we've always been in this middle ground where we're not huge, but we're not a super small group either. And I find that's kind of the toughest place. And that's kind of one thing I was able to learn, having to scale up a little face shield project, from zero to, I in March of after the first lockdown, I was and Luke, but we were, the only technical employees of the company. And then by the end of the year, we had 96 people on payroll. So it's like the structure of having to do that was like vastly different. And that, not that we're ever going to have 96 people building canoes, but we learned a lot. And if we can apply some of those, experiences, learning how to manage people and systems and processes, I think it's going to be a really good thing.
Right on. So if we could, let's dive into what your role has been with this new canoe. Tell us about the name of the canoe, what role you played as far as its creation, and others that you want to give shout outs to, because I'm sure it was a huge team of people that created the Noio. First off, am I saying it correctly? Let's make sure I go down the path.
Yeah,
A lot of people want to be pronouncing it as it should be.
Noio is correct. There's no Kahagos or Rokinas or anything that I think some people are already, I've seen it. Some people say that, but yeah, it's straight Noio. We actually, every time we go through a new build or something, we have a brainstorming session of possible names. And this is one we've been kind of holding on to for, gosh, maybe like as long as 4 or 5 years already. And that's, it just kind of stuck. And it's also, if you look up images of the Noio, it's a beautiful little seabird. It's just black and gray, and it's just super streamlined. And there's also some other good stories. Kuviko Carvello has a nice write-up, on how navigators on Hokulea will, they use that as an indicator of being near land. And so yeah, there's a cool backstory. It's a rad little, little cool looking bird, and kind of fits. And we didn't intend to have a bird theme, but it sort of ended up that way, and we'll go with it.
Yeah, I think you're stuck now. If there's a future that's not a bird, we're gonna start to question where it came from.
yeah.
Right on. And so we pronounced Noio. It's a kind of a guiding bird, shorebird. Tell me a little more about who came up with the name first, and then did it stick so much that
gosh,
like, yeah, all right, that's the name? Or
I honestly don't know who came up with the name first, because they were, it was probably 2019 where the name got mentioned when we were trying to name our future 6-man that actually still is not fully built yet. But there is a girl that worked here named Rachel. She came up with a bunch of names. George may have been involved. It's very much, we have all these like group texts of just, things flying around. So
I love it.
I don't know exactly.
All right. And what role did you play with the design of the canoe before we go down the path of why it's different and new?
So we started in 2007 with kind of 3 of us friends. I've always kind of been the in theory, the person that would hang out in the back on the computer. I went to school for aerospace engineering. I've sort of inevitably become the default lead of the company, as the person in the shop every day. So a lot of the things that we don't do on a daily basis end up being my job. So yeah, majority of the design, computer work, because molding isn't a process we do regularly either. I end up doing quite a lot, and obviously pulling in people for help when I can and when I need it. But yeah, I think I'm pretty involved with every aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so excited to specifically geek out with you and talk about some of the changes in it. So let's talk about it. I mean, a designer of a canoe could go for eternity before releasing it. You could just keep saying, oh, I could do this, I could do this. Oh, yeah. Let's hold off a little longer. It sounds like you went through 3 prototypes. What made you finally say, okay, it's time to pull the trigger and let's make this the one?
you at a certain point you run out of time. So you know that's certainly been our situation in many cases before. But yeah, and it's a very much a never-ending process of adjustments. And you know, you all going back to the Gen 2 Pueo and then the X, you know, we had quite a few experimental prototypes there. And then yeah, basically a series of 3 major changes in this round. And fundamentally it's a very, very different canoe. You know, and that's obviously one reason we chose to stray from the Pueo name, which has, you know, been good for so long. But it's fundamentally there's some pretty big changes that I can get into.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the goals for this new design. The Pueo X
Yeah.
was the most current canoe in the
Mhm.
collection of the Pueo family.
Yeah.
Set out to make a new canoe. What were you trying to improve upon specifically as you were kind of creating this? It sounds like you've got
Right.
a balance of flat water and surf, which is kind of the perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody wants both.
That's yeah. And we're definitely still trying to kind of make the ultimate all around performing boat, you know. You know, specialization is great and sometimes it's absolutely necessary, and you know that's definitely something we did with the Pueo X, and probably hopefully by next year we'll probably make them, you know, a footwell extension to get a little bit better performance for taller paddlers. But yeah, like you know, the Pueo has kind of always been good all around, and that was very much the goal for the Noio. And it's funny, if you like really, if you go read through all the descriptions, there's some contradicting things, and that's simply because you learn a lot over years and years of using it. You know, some things you think are a major improvement in the beginning and get you certain characteristics end up being a detriment later on. So you know, you're kind of, for this we essentially erased everything from the drawing board and kind of tried to essentially do everything from scratch almost, to try and keep the characteristics we like and get rid of the ones that we don't like.
Okay. Right on. Yeah, the balance of I mean, you could specialize, but then you lose the all-around great canoe. And one of the reasons
Yeah.
I have liked the Pueo X so much is I wouldn't feel very often like I brought the wrong canoe to the wrong environment. Like it was pretty much
Right.
solid in
Right.
headwind, downwind, flats. I never felt cheated.
Yeah.
That can be frustrating, like bringing the wrong rudder, bringing the wrong canoe. And so
Yeah.
I always felt like I was in a good position with that particular canoe. Was that a focus here too?
Very, very much so. You know, you know, and like a lot of what you've seen in the industry with you know, Kai Bartlett and Pueo, you know, everyone wants a surf boat, and you know, they're specializing into more flat water boats. And it's, I'm still stuck on, can we do both? And I, you know, my bet is that we can. You know, I'm sure, and in any race you're going to see a little bit of both. You don't, you know, if you're doing Molokai to Oahu, you don't really know what the conditions are going to be till a few days before, and you want to be ready for anything. Your boat's probably already shipped there, and that's kind of, it's still our goal is to make a boat that performs well everywhere for all different size people.
All right. So let's talk about the 3 types of conditions, and let's get into the nitty gritty a little bit.
Sure.
3 specific types of conditions. There's all sorts of slop we can paddle in, but personally, I've had great success in upwind, almost to the point where people are like, "Oh, he's going to do well there because it's an upwind leg.
Yeah.
He's got a Pueo." And so it almost
Yeah.
became a known strength that, like, oh well,
You,
they would write me off on that stretch. But so
Yeah.
let's talk about the upwind. What improvements have been made that would help with that, or at least keep it as a well-known canoe in that environment?
and that, you know, like we plan and have all these expectations and experiences we have in testing. We don't, you really get to know a canoe after using it for years and years and years, which we don't have that backlog of experience yet. And we're like super confident in the flat water performance. I'm like pretty darn confident in the downwind performance. Upwind is where I know the Pueo 2 and Pueo X are going to be really hard to beat. And if there's major chop going on upwind, that would be my one like hesitation of being a straight up improvement. So,
Okay.
but you know, we'll see. Like I don't think. Yeah, no, I guess we'll see. Like, but yeah, the Pueo 2, that, you know, the first race, you know, we came out with that thing and had I think we came out with it March of, it must have been 2013, and people were racing it, you know, the first couple races. It's funny, you know, one of our guys, McCullough Denton, did a race and he had like the worst race of his life during Canoe, and then they had the channel that year, and it was, I forget if it was straight upwind or just like super light, but like, you know, you could almost consider it an upwind channel, and they just did absolutely incredible. So the Pueo is very much proven in upwind conditions, and so we'll have to get a lot more testing to really to define it a little better, a little more clearly.
Okay. What improvements or advancements have you done for the flats? And before you answer that, I noticed one thing about the design. I see a little bit of a K1 influence because of the angular triangular right where the hips are of the paddler. Is that am I seeing things, or is that an influence there?
No, I don't have a whole lot of experience. Other than, you know, seeing pictures of K1s. But certainly in general, that idea of keeping your water line narrow and building more reserve outside of the water, you know, above the water line, is very prevalent kind of throughout all canoe designs nowadays, especially at least for one-man canoes. I've tried it in 6-man, it doesn't work quite as well there, but yeah, you know, I would say the number one thing to make a more efficient canoe is to go more narrow, but you lose a lot too, you know, if there's definitely a too far or too narrow, and then you just don't have the volume, and you know, you know, and some of our previous earlier designs or other canoes, they would kind of get swamped up, you know, swallowed up as you're actually the picture on our website, you know, you're on the crest of the wave on our homepage. There's a picture of Travis where he's kind of floating at the top. And if you don't have that like reserve volume in the middle, the canoe will actually just kind of sink in a way. So you're kind of balancing that, you know, try to make the water line more narrow without losing that buoyancy necessary to do well in the surf. And you know,
so with the Noio, then what did you do compared to the Pueo to address that?
So I guess I might as well walk you through our design process, or the process that I go through. You know, in some sense, I mean, so probably I do a lot of work on the computer, and the benefit there is that you can do you can iterate through designs a lot quicker. Ultimately, you do need real world testing, and we obviously do that too, but I go through like way more cycles on the computer, and kind of it's a bit of a search problem, right? You're kind of searching for like, okay, how do we improve this? You know, and the first step that I go through is to try and figure out what's going to make it better in flat water. And one thing we did on the Pueo series was that we started moving all the weight forward, because we're like, okay, you know, your weight's forward now, you're going to get into the bump sooner, you're going to drop in super easy. And then, you know, after years and years of doing that, getting feedback from a kind of more elite paddlers and watching them, you know, there's a point where you're too far forward, and these guys that are, you know, the top 10 guys are jumping waves where the rest of us might not be, but they're like plowing up and over. And when you are too far forward, that's becomes more difficult. So that was one key thing that was in my head. The other thing, again, looking at the flat water situation, you know, the most efficient boats, you end up moving the mass almost like directly to the center of your water line length. So that was kind of our starting point. And then you kind of try and figure out how to retain all of those surfing capabilities, which you know, we really, if you look at this hull shape, it's radically sort of unusual. You know, George was joking that like you can very much tell we did not copy anyone because it's just so different. So that's kind of where all the tweaking came in, and you know, the first prototype we made kind of had all these features, and we really experimented with sort of, you know, you got your cross section of canoe that's underwater, and we really experimented with kind of like trying to make that cross section smaller, and pulling some of that volume that's, you know, normally in width farther out onto the ends of the canoe. And at some point I'll post a video of pulling out this first prototype, and it was real weird looking. And then we went and tested it, and there were certain aspects that were just like amazing. You know, we did a series of 5 sprints, and no matter who was on the canoe, they would win. And it was like, oh yeah, that's like pretty clear cut in that short of a sprint, you know, with switching paddlers. And that was kind of our expectation. But when we started using it in the surf more, it almost felt a bit like a surf ski. Like you didn't have that sort of maneuverability, and because the rocker ended up being a lot straighter, the pitch stability was almost too high. So you have your canoe like this, you know, one-mans are known for kind of teetering pretty easily and kind of dropping into the bump more so than surf skis, and it would kind of like move like that versus kind of dropping in. So we kind of knew like, okay, like fast in a lot of ways doesn't feel right, and so we basically chopped that one up, and redid it, and then we learned a bunch from that, and then we made some other additional adjustments for the third one. That ended up being our final. But yeah, so as far as major changes, it's like shifting the weight back, and then adjusting the cross section and volume to get kind of the surfing performance and maneuverability that we wanted. And you know, I talked a lot about with the Pueo X, it was we learned a lot about pitch stability, and again with this prototype of like how that changed the feel, and that it's all like a, you know, a 180-pound guy with a 20-pound canoe, you're displacing the same amount of water, right, no matter what canoe you're on, and it's just sort of where we put all that volume. So when you flip this canoe over, you'll see some weird, not weird, but there's like very defined flat sections, and that's really to kind of control the shape of the rocker for maneuverability purposes and get volume where we want it. So you know, the biggest factor I look at is surface area. You know, so you know, a round shape is going to have the least surface area for that volume. And that's kind of typically, you know, that you look at the Pueo, it's very round and very successful because of that. But you know, container ship is square because it holds volume. You know, there's you can put a lot more volume in a square shape. So you know, kind of looking back at all the prototypes I've done years ago, you know, probably pre Pueo X, we had some real interesting prototypes where they were like real narrow and like real deep in the rocker. So like you know, we're kind of where our sticker is, the bottom of the hull would actually be like almost like the deepest point in there, not on the Noio, but like, you know, so if you pinch in the nose, you end up having to go deeper to kind of retain any volume in the front, right? So essentially, to kind of try and hold on to that maneuverability, the ends are sort of U-shaped.
Okay.
So there's this interesting transition from like, you know, sharp entry to kind of U-shaped to fully round, back to like a little bit U-shaped, and then a clean exit, which it's unusual, and I think it's going to, you know, bring out some unique characteristics on the performance.
Awesome. How about in the surf? So we talked about the flat now, we talked about a little bit of the headwind. These advancements you made, not only for Hawaii waters, but being from California myself, how could these changes affect and improve a paddler's performance? And also, let's talk a little bit about something I read about where you shifted the Yakos and the Ama. That seems a pretty significant change too. So let's hear it off in the surf specifically.
Yeah, no, and that's you know, there's again, it started with that whole flat water thing. You know, we can get more efficient moving the weight back, and then it's how do you retain all the surfing characteristics, and that was one automatic. You know, moving the Ama back. You know, the probably one of the bigger complaints of the Pueo is that the Ama would stuff, and that was, I believe, like half a function of it being so far forward. So moving it back, I think. Again, I think it's going to help as much as sort of the changes in the Ama design itself. And
surfing, the Ama, did the Yakos switch, or just the Ama just got shifted?
So
there's like maybe 4 or 5 fingers of distance between the front Yako and the front of the Ama. There's nothing there hardly. And then there's a good maybe 1.5 feet, 18 inches behind the back Yako. So just the Ama switch, but the Yako stayed pretty much in the same place?
It depends on where you measure from, and that's, you know, like I feel like a lot of times when people are designing stuff, they take an existing product and kind of modify it, and they know exactly what they changed, but we change so much. It depends on really where you measure from.
Okay.
You know, so if you know, if you line up two Noio and a Pueo, it's actually pretty shocking how far back it is. You know, it's looking at it straight on, it's practically like, I think it's about 8 inches or so, which is a shocking amount when you really get down to it. I think from the water line, it's a little bit less than that. But I'm kind of straying here. Your original question is about surfing performance, right?
Yeah, so these great advancements, I totally derailed, that's on me. These advancements, how do they affect us in the surf?
I mean, so moving the weight back, it is going to produce a little bit looser of a boat. And you know, the concern, what we didn't want to do is make it drop in super late. So there, you know, if anything, because the bows, it's a more narrow bow, but it's also quite a bit longer relative to where you're sitting. So, you know, the theory is you kind of get roughly the same volume. It's just sort of extended out, and hopefully we don't, you know, there's not going to be a super late drop, and kind of, you know, so when Travis was using it, you know, he described it very much as feeling like it's not too different from what people are used to. You know, you jump on it, you feel comfortable. You know, people have noticed you got some extra bow in front of you, but the feeling in the surf is very, very similar. And that's, you know, that was partly our goal, to not lose any performance. And being that, like, it's going to be more efficient through the water, you know, the goal is to try and raise those average speeds, right? So if you're more efficient, either sitting on a bump or in flat water, you know, hopefully you can kind of carry and maintain a higher speed overall.
Okay. All right. So I got a whole list of questions here. I'm just kind of
yeah. No,
I totally get sidetracked because it's fun to
like. I don't get into too many details like this, so it's a fun conversation.
One thing I noticed again, because like so many people, you send out a great email with a whole bunch of like specific topics. So we talked about the whole design a little bit. The Ama we just talked about, but there was something specific about the Ama that I think is really interesting. You talked about elevating the surface area and the volume above the water line, which, hello, that seems like to make total sense. You reduce the friction, but you still have the volume when it's needed. So how did that, if we were to get some Play-Doh, how did that change?
So, I mean, and that's kind of part of our entire goal, you know, like, you know, if you go read about America's Cup boats, you know, they of course made the transition to foils and whatnot, but we're all sort of pinching pennies here. It's hard to squeeze out more than 1% increase in efficiency. And given that we had a little more time with kind of this, world pandemic break that we got, we really wanted to focus on squeezing out every little last ounce of performance, out of every part that's causing drag, which is why we spent so much time on the Alma, on the rudder, and all of that. And that, the goal is for that to sort of all add up to a significant improvement, which you don't see a lot these days anymore, because all the boats these days are pretty darn good. So that was kind of the goal. Specifically with the Alma, what changed? And we've played with Almas quite a bit over the years, and it's an interesting design problem, because your Alma is, it's floating next to you, and the Alma's 4 pounds, but sometimes you're putting a ton of weight on it, and sometimes you're trying to get the thing completely off the water. So you kind of got to pick what you're designing for and do your best to figure that. Early on, I kind of imagined an Alma as like a planing part. And if you look at the Gen 1 Pueo Alma, it was it almost looked like a powerboat hull, very like U-shaped, kind of flat bottom, pretty narrow. And then, it almost made the canoe feel like a catamaran, which at the time was pretty different. And as time progressed, we kind of made some modifications. The second one got a little more round, and this one is in a picture, it doesn't look all that different, but when you really look at it, it's like almost like a V kind of, which gets you this like super narrow water line. And one tool I got super into, and I'm very much a novice at it, but it's been a bit of a valuable tool for this design, is CFD or computational fluid dynamics. And like, I'm like super novice, but it's given us another data point on making a more efficient boat. And that's previous to that, like all my design was sort of just all based on feel. So in this case, I kind of designed a bunch of Almas and tried to figure out what's going to be a significant decrease in drag. And that was really the only thing that did it, was, going from this wide to that wide.
Okay.
But if you look at a Tahitian lagoon canoe or something, that's what they are. They're just real narrow, real long. But of course, in the surf, we don't want that. So we basically, if you submerge an entire Pueo Alma, it's basically the same total volume. It's just sort of redistributed to be more above the water and less in the water.
I think that's the word that it seems like a real advancement, is the redistribution of that volume.
Yeah, and when you really look at it, it's much more like the canoe hull in a way. So it's kind of taking everything we learned and sticking it on the Alma, and actually, like, the feedback from that thing has been pretty positive. So it's more definite than anything. It's like a major improvement in the Alma. So
cool. Yeah, and if they're similar, working well together, that's the magic right there.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move to the next component of this evolution. So we've got the hull, we've got the Alma. Now you've got this Vulcan fighting weapon looking rudder that from Star Trek makes me think it's going to come at me and hurt me. It looks radically different. Walk me through it.
Part of it is we want to make people scratch their head a little bit.
Yeah.
No, it's all based on real research. There's a lot of academic papers nowadays about the hydrodynamics of these, whale fins, and you're seeing it in other industries in the sailing world. People are doing it on rudders. Obviously, one thing that people probably see a lot these days is on surfing foils. The company Takuma does a lot. And if you get into the research, essentially what it does is keep that flow attached to the rudder, and prevents it from kind of slipping off, which means like you got your rudder like this, or wing, and as you turn it, at some point it's going to stall, right? The flow is going to separate, and you'll kind of feel that like you lose control a little bit. And that's very much something that we kind of our rudder designs have gotten longer and longer. You could do these high aspect ratio wings because that's in theory it's going to be more efficient. But they do stall, right? So and at some point you're like, you keep making a bigger rudder, you're like, I really don't want to make a bigger rudder because it's going to be more drag, and that's kind of reading through this research, we're like, well, wait a minute, that's if you can get a couple extra degrees before the wing's going to stall and kind of slip, that's going to be a good thing. So essentially we were able to make a rudder with near identical surface area that stalls at a much higher angle. So you really like feel locked in and fully in control. And I'll get in your notes, you mentioned weeds, and that's for California, that's obviously very much a concern. I don't think we would ever apply it to a swept rudder. But in surf or gorge conditions or big stuff out in Hawaii, obviously, I think it's going to be a big improvement.
Right on. Okay. So this wouldn't be a replacement for my flat water days. This would strictly be surf rudder.
Yeah, I have ideas about making a smaller one, but yeah, like it will be a weed catcher. If that's a concern in your area, so, I wouldn't necessarily stray from
It's
myself,
not a concern until I catch it, and then it's stuck.
Yeah.
Shaking my head. But hey, then we have a built-in excuse of how we would have beat our buddy if only I hadn't hit that seaweed. So talk about the the rudder placement in the canoe. Did that change at all? More back, more forward? Does it break out as much?
I think we're pretty similar. Because of these kind of flat spots that are closer to the ends of the canoe, essentially if we kept it round, that rocker would be dropped a little bit lower, assuming we kept the same width. So that flat spot actually helps with maneuverability in a lot of ways, keeps the canoe nice and loose, and at least in our experience so far, you can really kind of put that thing wherever you want it.
Nice.
So yeah, no, I don't think we made the canoes itself is 2 inches shorter. I think relative to the water line, it's pretty consistent. We've always it's a lot of times, especially like years ago, people moved the rudder farther and farther forward to kind of keep it in the water. But it's not something we've taken a super close look at more recently. We've been pretty happy where it's been at.
You just talked about 2 inches shorter.
Overall, yes.
Let's talk about the dimensions. So length, width, weight. Everyone's all crazy about weight these days.
Yeah.
And there's some really good discussions I've been reading about people doing tests with holding a 5-pound weight in their canoe and seeing if they can sustain their speed, get up to speed quicker, slower. And so weight is maybe a factor. Maybe it's overblown a little bit. So what are your thoughts on the weight of a canoe? And I know you've got different levels of team and pro and elite and whatever cool buzz.
Yeah. I mean, weight's an interesting thing. I mean, certainly in flat water, I think it makes less of a difference. My theory is that it's mostly about acceleration and how easily you can catch a bump. So I don't think we'll ever chase every last ounce possible, because then the canoes become more or less disposable, right? It's just going to last a shorter time period and get damaged easier, and you risk breaking the thing. And certainly over the years, we especially from like early 2008, 2009, we started pulling out pieces that were like, oh, we can do without that. You add different core materials and change the layup, and you start to optimize as best as you can. And there's certainly, because of the new tech we're applying, we have this big old autoclave that should help us kind of advance our construction techniques. There will be more options. I think because it's very similar in surface area to a Pueo, I think the weights are roughly going to be the same initially. And there's certain things we can do with the paint that help save weight. So we'll kind of see. Right now I know we're able to hit the 17 to 19 pound range relatively consistently with certain colors. we'll see if we can develop a repeatable process to get lighter than that. But that's something we definitely are going to be playing with.
Wait a minute, you mean to tell me that one color could be faster than another color?
Lighter. So like it's kind of shocking, the paint on a boat might be up to 2 pounds or
Wow.
even more. I mean, depend, so because we typically spray with in mold paints or gel coat, you end up, depending on the color, it has a different sort of translucency. So reds and yellows are a little bit tougher for us because you end up having to put quite a bit more paint. And that's the reason you see so many gray boats, is because it covers really well. We're able to skip a layer of bonding tie coat because of the chemicals are compatible. So you end up saving weight that way. And we are in Hawaii, so there's certain problems that we have with manufacturing as far as inventory goes. It's possible to do other colors besides gray, but maintaining inventory is troublesome when the chemicals go bad and all of that. So anyways, there's plenty of like experience we'll be doing, and that's part of the reason we've structured the orders the way they are, to allow us to experiment a little bit, try and get lighter boats. And like any product, we'll definitely be dialing it in as we kind of go forward and get all the molds running smoothly.
So if my competitor is looking to buy a canoe and I could get him to get a very slow, heavy color, what color would it be? Just between
Right
me and you.
now, like the yellows and reds and oranges are tougher, and that's, we'll often recommend, like, okay, if you want those colors, keep it isolated to the just the deck, or keep the hull white or gray, or something like that.
Cali Paddler blue, is that a pretty fast color?
The blues, the greens, cooler colors do a little better.
Just saying. Good. All right, what else we got for fun stuff? How's the cost? What do I gotta tell my friends we're gonna be paying for this beautiful new canoe?
There's a bit of a price increase. Our base price is 63, and it's the culmination of us holding our prices for so long. Obviously, manufacturing in Hawaii is going to be a little more expensive, and then inflation right now is troubling. So we'll kind of see how our business develops over the next year, but that's kind of where it needs to be right now.
Okay.
For us to make it all work. And we're really at, we've been quoting 8 months. Part of this entire move to a new shop space, the goal is to really make more boats,
Okay.
Which allows us to gain, efficiency, and so at least keep an eye on costs going too high.
Okay. You mentioned the autoclave a couple minutes ago. Without
Yes.
going into too much scientific jargon, what does that allow you to do? Because that's a very big, crazy thing that you purchased.
Yeah. I still sometimes I wonder if I should have bought a house. No, it's like it's the way I describe it, it's basically an instant pot for larger objects, right? It's pressure and heat and applying it super consistently. And we've obviously done without it for years. You can get really good results, but it makes the process more repeatable, easier to scale, much better lamination quality as far as like, you got your 3 layers are going to be bonded together a lot better because you're applying quite a bit more pressure, 3 to 4 to whatever times the amount of pressure you want to throw at it, up until you eliminate imperfections and voids in the laminate. So we've been doing that since we've got it running in November, and it sort of opens up the door to endless possibilities as far as techniques and tools that we can apply.
Right on. One thing you've done in the past that I think I read that you're gonna have to hit the pause button on a little bit is custom paint and colors, at least for the short term. But are you gonna be getting back to that at some point?
Absolutely. And part of it, I want us to go to experiment a little bit more. Almost as I want us to be able to. We have all these like amazing artists that work here, and we don't. We're very underutilizing their skills. So I want to be able to experiment a little bit more, without necessarily having to be you know, strict in like how we do it or what we do it. So we'll see. Like you know, it's basically giving us a chance to expand our process capabilities. And I know we can deliver like kind of quality solid color boats from right now, and we'll definitely, you know, the team gray and other T-style colors where we do say weight, we'll be building those to try and get the lightest boats we can right now out there.
Awesome. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask about are the settings for the ama and the yakos where they meet the canoes. Are there a lot of adjustability options there? Is it the same as the Pueo? Talk to me there.
Yeah, it's actually that's, you know, every time you go through a design process, you're like, okay, what are we going to change? And it reminds me of you know, the plug on the iPhone or something. It's you know, we actually intentionally chose not to change the yakos, so the yakos are more or less the same as the Pueo. The settings are very similar. The spacing on the front of the ama is a little bit different, but I think for most people, you more or less rig on the same settings and adjust the back to where you like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you totally off topic, but do you ever have people reach out to you to help dial in those settings? And are you available, or is there somebody we can reach out to at the company?
Yeah, I mean, definitely email us or call us anytime. I think we have a write-up from some years ago. It definitely needs updating for the new boat. And honestly, we should we should probably make some YouTube videos or something. But yeah, and it's funny. We definitely, everyone sort of rigs differently. You know, the two things I really tell people as a starting point: get yourself sitting more or less in level, so you're not tweaking your back one way or the other, and then make sure the trim of your ama is good, which typically means like the waterline starts roughly 18 inches from the front, not too flat. But it's, you know, and the heavier you are, you're going to use the lower settings. The lighter you are, pull it out a little more. But try and do it in parallel, not necessarily one or the other.
Okay.
But yeah, like everyone, you know, Travis rigs his settings all the way down. You know, if you're 220 or over, we actually you might want to modify your yakos to kind of get a little more stability, or if you're leaning too far right. And then if you're lighter, it's obviously higher up. But yeah, it's personal preference really at the end of the day.
I've found that comfort makes for a good paddle.
Yeah.
I've gotten very comfortable in my particular setting, but then I've loaned my canoe to a friend and I'm side by side, and their settings needed to be changed because they were not having a good time. And for whatever reason, it was too heavy, it was too light. And it's amazing how personal that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I guess my concern is people don't don't necessarily realize it's something they can tune a lot until they find their right setting necessarily. At least that's something I've seen. But
I haven't straightened my settings, and I probably should.
I find my setting and leave it for almost any condition. That's the way I do it. So
there it is.
Everyone's different, right?
Yeah. What else we got here? So what's going to happen to the Pueo X? Are we still going to continue to see that, or is this going to be replacing it with the Noio?
For right now, we're still building it because we basically have one production mold of the Noio. We're still working on the second and possibly additional molds beyond that. So we're continuing for now. I can't say when we'll stop with the X and the Gen 2, but we may. You know, our molds they've been running a long time, so there is a point we'll need to retire them.
There was a running joke about the Pueo 2, like how to tell the difference between the Pueo 1 and the Pueo 2, and it was the front
front bungees and back bungees.
The bungees. So, and the Pueo X had it. Now you've taken the bungees away from us.
Yeah, we're basically just go back and forth, you know.
What was the
what did we do last time? Let's do the opposite.
Yeah, well, hey, change is good, even if it's irrelevant. But this one is probably going to be talked a little bit about, maybe jokingly or not. What was the premise behind that?
That was part of it's ease of production, right? You know, it bungees, there's some details in there. You got to backfill it so you can drill a hole through the boat. So it's definitely simpler to not have them. I always tend to use the back for a water pack. And there, we may play with some options later on, but for now, that's what we're running is just back bungees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I tend to try to go light during a race, but there are times where I'm going for a long paddle and I got a radio, I got a GPS, I got I'm using that stuff. And then other times it's completely empty. So there's a time and place for it.
Yeah.
So if you could just pick a couple words to describe this new canoe, and that's a hard question, but just
the best canoe ever.
The best canoe ever. All right.
I don't have any like specific. I don't. We're excited about it. It hopefully gives us as a company a path to really kind of make sure canoe building in Hawaii sticks around. There's I guess I'm such a geek. I love like everything. I mean, one is just it's fun to build stuff, but I love like applying new tools and techniques and kind of learning different processes. And it's really fun to sort of dial that all in, and launching a new canoe is part of that. And obviously the paddling part we all love too. And I'm excited to hopefully get back into racing at some point. I feel myself becoming an adult with less time, but certainly it lights a fire to try and get back into the race scene, and as more races start happening, which it already has, but all the big ones have been still canceled, which is hopefully we'll be coming back.
Are the team riders that have had a chance to get on it pretty happy so far?
Yes, yeah. We haven't made them both yet. There's the green one is the only one currently in existence. But yeah, they've been taking it, and we definitely got to do some more photo shoots, get more demo boats made and all of that. But yeah, so far feedback's been real positive.
Right on. Cool. Any last wrap? Oh, hold on. Before that one, timeline. When can we get our hands on these canoes for demos in Hawaii and California? I know there's a time shift there.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically going as fast as we possibly can. Our immediate plan, I mean, we've got some work on the mold to do as far as full production. We've got to make a second mold, which is all of that's kind of happening this month. Hopefully, I mean, we're starting to just selectively get this one out as a demo boat. We're trying to figure out the timeline for Gorge right now. So that's like what I have to do. I got to figure, look at the calendar real closely and figure out how we make this happen. As far as demo boats go,
there's 600 people who will try it right there.
I know. It's kind of amazing that's happening up there, and I hear all good things about it. And then it's kind of how quickly can we figure out our production and ramp up in quantity, and hopefully we can bring that wait time down a bit. But with kind of juggling like how many people are going to switch from the Pueo list to the Noio list, and how many orders come in, we've just been kind of holding a 8-month estimate right now. But the goal is to make that a lot shorter, and more options available for getting a canoe quicker and faster. And as far as shipments go, our goal is to start shipping more regular containers. Previously, especially to the West Coast, we've always been shipping individually, which has been a little bit more difficult recently. So if we can do partial containers or even full containers, where we kind of group a bunch together, it'll make things a lot smoother. Anyway, so as quick as possible. But yeah, at this point, it'll still be a little bit till they really get out there.
Okay. You just mentioned something that I was really stoked to hear, that if somebody's been on a waiting list for a Pueo X, they can shift to the waiting list for this. So there's no hard feelings on either part. They'd like, hey, I had been waiting and now suddenly a new canoe comes out. I got FOMO. Can I jump on that? So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think there will be some, there's definitely going to be a wait. They're going to have to wait longer and pay the difference in price and all of that. But and I think Pueo is going to be competitive for it's been competitive for this long. It's still competitive.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, there's incentive to stay, but there's also, if you already have a perfectly good canoe, you might want to wait. So
I love that option. Good to have that choice. Last comments, anything you want to do, shout outs, or just to share last minute about the new canoe?
No, you've covered a lot. We're super excited about it. In some ways it's like, okay, back to the grind. We got to get this going. But yeah, no, we're pumped on it. I'm really looking forward to sort of next season and kind of having all the pieces come together, and for us as a business, it's a big step, and we're real optimistic about sort of our future and what we do, and yeah, looking forward to everything.
Right.
And one, thank you for doing this kind of thing. I think we need more of it out there. So
there's
good on you.
plenty of people who love to talk canoe, love to talk
Yeah.
paddling for that matter. And I know some surf ski paddlers. I was sending them a chance to ask questions. And stand-up paddlers are curious about this. Outrigger, obviously. So there's just general interest in anything canoe related. You and I were talking about some podcasts earlier with Will and Kel, and how just the dialogue, it just feeds us. It's so the more we can do, the better.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see all the crossovers happening. I think recently, there's a number of surfers that are picking up canoes, which is cool to see. These watermen that are so amazing at one sport, they pick up a canoe and it's all new. And you've got to have seen that with foiling too. There's stand-up people jumping over, and then canoe people jump over, and they have this whole different view of the ocean. And so it's, there's all this cross-pollination happening, which is a great thing for sort of all water sports for that matter. But I mean, outrigger's still the best, and it's cool when people switch over. But
I love them all, but no argument here. It is definitely you bring up an interesting point. I know we're supposed to wrap up, but there's been a lot of crossover because of the pandemic. A lot of dragon boaters have been coming over. It's really opened an idea of how talented and fast they can be, but giving them an opportunity to be on OC1s now. Have you reached out at all to the dragon boat community and seen some interest there?
No, I'm so isolated. I spend all my days in the shop, or so I haven't. But I heard a little bit on Will and Kelly's podcast, and Kai's rigging on both sides, which I didn't, never occurred to me that's like a major benefit for dragon boat paddlers. So that's really cool to see, and I don't know that we could necessarily do the left and right rigging real easily, but yeah, no, as far as like, people jumping over, especially during the pandemic, to like single person craft, I think that's awesome. And I think this boat will do well in just about any condition. So I hope it picks up momentum for all those paddlers out there.
Right on. Well, as mentioned before, as somebody who's had a Pueo X and in all conditions had success and fun with it more than anything, and comfort and adventure, if this can exceed those levels of fun, then there's a lot of happy paddlers on their way out. So
awesome.
Thank you so much, man. Keizo, to the whole team at Kamanu, thanks for keeping canoe building near your home there and making it something that Hawaiians could take pride in. As somebody who goes to surfing shapers and likes to see the process, people can go and visit your shop, right? So if somebody's on Oahu, they can set up a tour with Arya and maybe see behind the scenes a little bit about the mana and the effort that goes into it.
Absolutely. And that, I want to start sharing a little bit more of those aspects of things, because we've kind of kept a lot of it secret in some ways. But obviously nowadays, sharing is usually a good thing, and there's definitely a lot of interest. We've had a lot of like young people that are just interested in building cool things that have kind of come through here as interns, and it's all around, I think it's a good thing, and building something we're proud of is what it's all about, and hopefully we can keep doing it.
Right on. Well, thanks again, Keizo. I could not be more stoked to chat with you today.
Awesome.
For all the listeners out there, KamanuComposites.com is the website, right?
Yep.
Check out the site, the new Noio canoe, just been announced. There's some great pictures, some great modeling of the canoe. You can see all the different angles of the ama and the canoe, and the yakos and the rudder design. It's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Clark, and thank you, Cali Paddler.
Right on. Have a great day, everybody.